75th anniversary of D-Day. The 2020 election is still almost a year and a half away, and Donald Trump is sounding strong and sure of himself, ready to take on any one of the candidates who makes it through the field of over 20 who have lined up on the Democratic side to oppose him. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, the capital of my state where I've lived for over 3 decades, preparing to start a project for the election. No apologies, I'm a liberal Democrat wanting to talk to people beyond my comfort zone. And so begins my project. Where are we now? Wisconsin.
Anyone making pizza dough at home, and this is basically a question that I always get, is how come my pizza dough is not as good as yours?
It's taken me weeks and more than 100 phone calls to track down a handful of conservatives willing to appear in this documentary. Some of my liberal friends have asked me why I'm bothering. The reason's simple. I believe moderates from both sides of the aisle can help our country come together. I'm not looking to destroy Republicans as President Trump claims Democrats want to do. So I'm setting off with curiosity and an open ear and no intention of debating or converting anyone. And here, about 2 hours northwest of Madison, I'm on my way to a family-owned factory.
I was concerned about doing this interview because the people in our country, they take bits and then they turn it into something that it's not.
Everyone's offended by everything, where if we don't agree, we're enemies. And we want to be friends with all of our employees and all of our community and in our country, in which, in the end of the day, you can't make everybody happy. But knowing that we can share and disagree on big issues, but still be Americans and still treat each other with respect and love one another. We want to promote that kind of care as Americans and humans.
I care about each one here, so if I were to say something that would hurt our brand and then take away their job, I'm responsible. So, sorry.
That's fine. Our experience from a business standpoint, we've seen a direct shift in a positive direction from the Obama administration to the Trump administration when it comes to our overall sales and status of the economy. The exact policies to do that with, do I know if they're 100% right or not? That I don't know the answer to. I just, from a business standpoint, there's no denying that there was a huge upswing in the economy. Finding employees right now, if somebody is a good employee, they have a job.
All 5 of us sitting at the lunch table are all ex-dairy farmers.
What happened?
We couldn't make it. We found employment elsewhere.
Why couldn't you make it?
Because of the dairy industry. The dairy industry sucks. The tariffs, buddy, are a good thing. The farmers, I hope, can hang on long enough that it takes hold.
I don't believe that the Trump administration is putting us at a risk to lose the resources and climate and everything that our country has. If you look objectively like where our country is at for control of pollutants, I think we do a very, very good job. Now there has to be restrictions. I'm not saying that we just let things roll. But from the Republican side to the Democratic side, I think that the more the government controls, the more waste there is. Immigration, I believe, is probably the hardest issue that our country's actually faced with today. I'm not in government, and I wouldn't even know how do you solve this because it's so big, and it's a humanitarian thing where these are people. So are all the people that are in the country that have this huge blessing of living in America. To deny that to someone else, we're all immigrants in a way. We've all come here. Several of our employees were born and raised locally, but we do have some people that immigrated to this country since they were little. They're great employees and we're glad to have them as part of our team. But also know that if it was just an open door policy, everybody comes in, we're gonna have huge problems. So what's the right balance of that? I'd like to find somebody that could figure that out and convey clearly what it is. I'm sure there's Republicans that would say the administration is flawless and everything they do is great. I'm not one of those. There's a lot of things that Trump has said and done and you kind of go, no, why would you say that? But as much as you would say that he does it, Democratic people do it as well. From the media to his tweets or whatever it is, I feel like there is a lot of spin to stir up mud, to make a story, to further divide our country from Democrats to Republicans.
From the moment I walked into Ann and Travis's factory, I felt welcome. Employees were friendly. Some even seemed impressed that I had bothered to come all the way from Madison for a visit. Travis allowed me to film everywhere except for one area where he didn't want his competitors to see the way he produced a certain item. Ann also asked me not to show their sign out front, fearing that its mention of products they make for certain recreational activities might turn off some of their musician customers. If I hadn't been there to listen only, I would have been happy to discuss immigration reform. I think Travis and I would have found common ground. As I drove off, my biggest disappointment came in how discreet mother and son had been about Donald Trump himself. His itchy Twitter fingers annoyed them the same as it does me. But when Travis criticized Democrats tweeting and spinning as if they shared equal blame in sabotaging civil discourse, I wanted to shout, "No, Donald Trump is different. Can't you see that his toxic, egotistical behavior and his abuse of power threaten all Americans?" But, as promised, I held my tongue, thanked them for their hospitality, and took my leave. Here, about 2.5 hours northeast of my Madison home, I'm on my way to a family-owned farm.
I am an owner of Meadowbrook Dairy Farms, LLC. I'm the 5th generation to farm here, and I farm along with my brother, my sister, and my brother-in-law, and also my parents. And my dad farmed with his brother for a while. They got it up to about 250, and now we're milking 450. We have about 8 full-time employees, not including ourselves, and then 6 or 7 part-time employees. My husband works in IT, and he's not involved in the farm at all, and that's okay. And my kids are 3 and 8 months, and they come and help very occasionally. It's a busy place. Wisconsin is losing 2 farms a day right now, and it's every size. It's little farms, it's big farms. The way the milk price works, it used to be a 3-year cycle, highs and lows every 3 years, every 4 years maybe, and we're on the 5th year of lows, so it's been harder for everyone. The trade is really important for dairy. China has the African swine flu right now, so their pork is dying, so they're looking for protein. So between soybeans and dairy, and beef, we can really supply some of that if we're allowed to. But I understand where the president's coming from, because China would like to be 50% owner of the business and then gets all rights to all their patents. So basically they're stealing our technology. So it might be hurting us that we don't have some of these we have these tariffs in place. But in the long run, it should be better for the country. I'm not totally comfortable speaking for other farmers. One thing I do know is that farmers don't like handouts. Right now, we're getting subsidies for crops and dairy and milk, but we're also getting subsidies for health insurance because there's not a lot of money in agriculture right now. So it's kind of disheartening for a lot of strong-willed, tough farmers out there to take a free handout, essentially. And there's a lot of farmers that have an off-the-farm job where their spouse does for the sole purpose of covering their health insurance cost. It's always been expensive to be self-insured, but it's the last since Obamacare has gotten way worse.
3 favorite things, let me guess. Eating asparagus, cleaning calf poop, and washing the laundry. Those are your 3 favorite things? This is your mom, right? Is that what she said?
Those are your favorites? So I firmly believe in right to life. Having 2 kids myself, I know that and this is where I'm gonna cry.
Okay, let me guess. Next 3 favorite things. What? I saw life. Don't get carried away. The camera can't take too much excitement.
That as soon as you get
Look at her. She's looking at the camera. She's thinking, Mom's smiling.
As soon as you get that positive test, you have that baby's life planned out. And I have a lot of friends that have struggled with infertility and things like that. And pregnancy is hard, yes, but it's not impossible. Women have been doing it for thousands of years. So if you can have that baby and give that baby to a family that wants it, I mean, that would be the ideal situation. Can you tell Mark what your hat says really loud?
Mark, Mama's great again.
So I have a hard time meeting in the middle on that one. That one's a solid standing point for me. Now I understand there could be some situations where rape, incest, those extremes where it would be really hard for a woman for 9 months to be pregnant with and be reminded all the time. So I don't know where that goes. We have a few Mexican employees, and they've been with us for a long time. And right now, with the unemployment rate as low as it is, I am a firm believer that we need immigration reform and that we need help getting more immigrants to the country legally. There was one Democrat that kind of made sense, seemed more middle ground, Gabbard, but then I looked her up and she's Hindu. So I don't know how I feel about that. We have the right to every religion, but does that affect your policy? I don't know. I think the president does use a lot of things kind of tongue-in-cheek to make a point. Almost does it overboard. Like if you shoot really far and, if we get back close enough, well, that's where he really wanted to go. Maybe is what he's thinking. I don't really understand what the president is doing with some of that, but I think America is pretty great. I think there's always things to improve on.
As a veterinarian's son and a former school teacher, I enjoyed my morning hanging out with Bethany's kids and cows. Her immigration comments sounded reasonable, and I couldn't contradict her family's experience with healthcare coverage. In a debate, I would have found it hard to attack Bethany's heartfelt stand on right to life versus a woman's choice, as it wasn't so far from my own. Her mistrust of Tulsi Gabbard's Hindu background, however, raised my hackles. It reminded me of Donald Trump's birther campaign and his attack on Barack Obama's alleged Muslim roots. In my classroom, it would have prompted me to ask if an American Hindu was any less trustworthy than an anti-war Quaker, a Lutheran of German descent, or a black evangelical who spoke in tongues. But I had not come to argue about the First Amendment or diversity in America, so I thanked Bethany for her time and drove off. And here, 4.5 hours northwest of Madison, I'm on my way to the home of a soldier.
Well, I was commissioned in 1968. I had a degree in engineering. Went to officer basic as an artillery officer, went to airborne school, ranger school, went to Vietnam, was with the 101st Airborne Division. Eventually went back to the artillery, became a battalion fire direction officer, came back to the States, went to graduate school. At that point I went special forces, Green Beret. Eventually went to the War College, and just before Desert Storm, I was asked to branch transfer to the Corps of Engineers in order to command an engineer group. As a colonel, retired as chief of staff of the division in 1998, 30 years after I started. I was given an opportunity to go to Afghanistan as a mentor to the Afghan general in charge of setting up the officer corps education system. My second year, I was a strategic planner, and among my responsibilities was to prepare the monthly briefing for the President of the United States, President Bush. In my last 2.5 years, I was the program manager in charge of all logistics training for the newly formed Afghan battalions. I was medevac out. They found out I had a heart problem caused by Agent Orange. They flew me to Germany, put a stent in my heart, and once you're on blood thinners, you can't go back to the war zone. Came back and retired, and my wife and I moved up here to Wisconsin in 2012. Maya, quiet down. Quiet down.
All right. Where to next?
Go in the house.
Okay.
I'm concerned about two major issues. One is the viability financially of our government. We have a tremendous deficit. If I don't mow this lawn pretty soon and get that mower fixed, the thing's going to be taller than me. And we've got candidates talking about expanding Medicare and Medicaid. What's nice about living out here in the country, for example, I like to target shoot. I've got a range behind my house. And Medicare, as it is scheduled to die before I will. And Social Security could run out potentially. And to exponentially expand these things troubles me, as well as uncontrolled immigration. I have some friends who are Vietnamese immigrants. They came over, the boat people, and hardworking. I don't think there's ever been a Vietnamese who's ever been on public welfare. That's not the case with other individuals. Nothing's free. There is no free lunch. And this march towards socialism, I think, is going to be rejected by the American people, generally speaking. I believe in limited government, but at the same time, there needs to be a safety net for people who can't help themselves. Preferably, I like to see that safety net being as close to the people as possible. I like to see a safety net at the local level. I like to see it at the state level. Federal level, they're so far away, removed, and there's so many bureaucrats typically involved with it that it never gets done the right way it wants to be. I mean, the war on poverty spent trillions of dollars and in my opinion, was not successful at all. Generally speaking, I think in the world, our standing is up, even though some people might think it's a little rough around the edges because of the way our president acts. I think there's more respect for the United States, more respect for our military. It's been built up. I think we have leaders of other countries who now realize we have a president who is concerned about America. And America first does not mean we don't care about our allies. But each country has to have certain nationalistic concerns. They'd be foolish not to. If you're the head of the Prime Minister of Canada, your first responsibility has to be the Canadians. Come on. I believe that there is climate change.
Still looking for a milk bone.
Do I believe it's caused primarily by man? I don't know that for a fact. There are lots of things that cause climate change, most of which are sunspots.
Okay.
This Earth's been around for billions of years. There were huge climatic changes in the Middle Ages that caused great harm to humans, both when it got cold and when it got warm again. There's been much more pollution during the time of the Industrial Revolution when it first started than we have now, except for maybe China and India. And the world didn't come to an end there. So can we do a better job? Do we need to do a better job? Absolutely. Do I think there's climatic shifts that are causing issues? Absolutely. It is getting warmer and there's more drought in California. Do I think the fact that we're getting warmer is a permanent thing? No, I don't. I think it'll shift back again as it has over the millennia.
They've been out here a lot and they've out of water.
To this day, I still believe in not polluting and everything else like that, and doing everything I can to help the environment. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to give up my SUV and ride a bicycle. Unless things change and the economy tanks, if the Democrats stay way left of center, I see Trump having a devastating win during the 2020 election. Now, if the economy suffered, as it did under Bush the senior, then he could be in trouble. Or if he acts like a jerk and offends too many people, it could affect his election. It could be very close. When the Founding Fathers set this up, they knew that if they went with popular vote, everyone would come from New England, and the southern states would have no representation at all. And that's why the Congress is set up the way it is, with 2 senators and population for the House of Representatives. Same thing with Electoral College. It was meant to make sure a person who gets elected has the support of the entire country. The fact that California is filled with a gazillion Democrats who are all going to vote for the Democratic Party is irrelevant. The whole idea is you got to get a cross-section of the United States. And if you look geographically of what Trump won versus Hillary, Hillary got a little blue up here in New England, and a little blue down in Florida, and a speck here or two, and the entire West Coast was all blue, and the whole rest of the United States was red. So Trump had more broader support among people than Hillary did. I don't buy all this stuff that millennials sit in their basement and do video games. A certain amount of that. But there's enough of those young men and women out there that are committed to social justice in a meaningful manner, who are concerned about the environment and are not all necessarily liberals. I see the young Republicans at these conventions, and these young men and women are articulate and are passionate and committed to trying to improve the nation through conservative values, as every bit as committed as young men and women who are on the Democratic side who are committed to theirs. Hopefully, they'll come to the realization that they need to talk to one another, and they can work together and put politics aside for the benefit of the citizens. And then we can get something accomplished for the environment and immigration and all the other issues that always seem to challenge our nation and will continue to challenge long beyond the point I'm on this planet.
I was too young for the draft during the Vietnam War, and I never served in the military. But if I had been a soldier, Paul is the kind of man I could follow. I liked him personally, and I appreciated his candor. That said, I found his blanket statement about no Vietnamese boat people ever having been on welfare beneath his character. In my classroom, I would have challenged him the same way I would have questioned someone doubting a Hindu candidate's loyalty to America. I also found his take on climate change simplistic for someone with his engineering background. We can't control sunspots, But I think we can do more to find alternative energy sources, and we can consume less. Believing that today's warming trend is going to shift and that things will work out as they always have is not convincing. Our forests could be cinders and our shorelines submerged in water before the planet cools. Paul's respect for millennials and his appeal for compromise made him more of my kindred spirit than the fact that we were both born and raised on the East Coast. As I head home, I want to feel hopeful. The Republicans I interviewed struck me as good-natured people, the kind who want the best for America and are poorly served by Donald Trump's vindictive ways, even if his Supreme Court picks match their beliefs. So what lies ahead? Can we find common ground over a woman's right to choose versus a fetus's right to life?
I'm the only one, I hope I'm the only one on this panel here that had 7 people shot in their neighborhood just last week.
Can the shouting matches about immigration stop long enough to allow measured discussion on how people from other countries become Americans? And what about the planet? Will there ever be enough scientific data to change the minds of those who insist that global warming is not the existential threat many people believe it is? I offer no answers to these and other questions that came up during my meetings with Republicans in rural Wisconsin. But I do believe that no matter what the media and our leaders left and right might tell us, if other regions of the country have folks like the ones I met, and more people trying to engage them civilly, better days must surely lie ahead.